Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. We have here a very interesting guest for you guys this evening. Please welcome to the show, Edward Dose. Edward, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Man, I'm making it, can't complain. Been fighting these damn electronics here to get this show up and going, but we're here. Now, for people that may not know your name by the sound of it or by, might not ring a bell, we're going to get into exactly what it is that you do, and we can take a look at all that artwork you got there behind you. You are actually a professional photographer who specializes in shooting some of the biggest names in music that I believe anybody has ever heard of. You've got quite a story, but before we get into that, like any good story, we want to start from the beginning. Kind of tell us a little bit about where you grew up, and was photography kind of something you were wanting to get into from jump, or did it come later on? Tell us about that.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My grandfather was a famous photographer in Manhattan. I never even thought about photography, not really. When I was a kid, when I was 16 years old, I worked for Mr. Nicks, Stevie Nicks's dad at Compton Terrace in Tempe, Arizona. And he knew that Aerosmith was Steven Tyler was my hero. And he knew that I liked taking pictures, which meant I took pictures of my friends and stuff like that. So he said, I'll pay you to take pictures of Steven Tyler. And I was like, oh my God, really? So I got to spend the entire day with Steven Tyler. Most of the night, I stood on the side of the stage and watched Aerosmith perform. And then afterwards, I took pictures of him afterwards and getting into the limousine and so forth. So that was my start into professional photography. And even then, I really didn't think anything more about it than just taking pictures for Mr. Nicks. It wasn't really until maybe 10 years after that I thought, well, I could probably do this for money because Mr. Nicks didn't really pay me that much. So I started taking pictures of friends and things like that for money and started doing that. And then I went into my real estate career. Didn't really think too much about photography, but kept doing it with different bands and things like that, different people, actors, actresses, so forth, and never really paid that much attention to it. I would take pictures at concerts, Ronnie James Dio and David Bowie and, things like that. And I never kept any of the stuff because I really didn't think anybody except me would want to see any of these pictures. So there's negatives, back when 35 millimeter had negatives, there's negatives somewhere in a box, somewhere in storage that has, all these pictures and negatives that are probably not very well taken care of or protected, sitting in a box somewhere. And it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that I started paying more attention to what I was doing, who I was shooting, and taking better care of the whole situation, putting everything on hard drives and editing things and sending them to publicity people and things like that, and putting them online. And then people started noticing this stuff. So the people that know me now think that I just kind of started, 4 years ago. And I haven't. I've been doing it since 1984, 83 or 84. And so that it just went on from there. And now I have a studio in the house. People come, actors, actresses, directors, movie directors, fashion designers, things like that. They all come, musicians come, and we shoot in the studio, or I go out to the concerts and shoot at the concerts.
Wow, that's cool. So how did you go about getting that gig with Stevie Nicks? I mean, or Stevie Nicks' dad, rather. Did you have an inside track? Did you know somebody? How did that go down?
No, no, I was a skinny little white boy with long hair, and walked up to Compton Terrace, and I said, "Who's in charge?" And they said, "Mr. Nicks. He's over in that trailer, but you don't want to talk to him." I said, "Yeah, I do." So I marched right into the trailer, and he's like, "Can I swear on this?" Can
Oh
I?
yeah, yeah. You do
Yeah.
what you
So
want, man.
I knocked on the door. He says, "Who the fuck is that?" And I opened it. I just opened the door. He didn't even say come in, but I opened the door and I said, "I want a job." And he said, "You're too young. Get the fuck out of here." So I said, "Well, I'm not leaving until you give me a job." And I kept pestering him the whole time that he was there, and he kept wanting me out. And the more he pestered me, the closer I got to him. And I just kept saying, I'm not leaving without a job. And finally, he just went down and he went down this whole list. You can't tell your friends that you work here because they'll all want backstage passes.
Yeah.
You bust your ass. If I catch you slacking, you're out of here. If I catch you messing with the artist, you're out of here. I mean, there was this huge big list of things, which he didn't write down. He just told me all this stuff. And I said, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And he said, all right, here's this guy, go talk to him. He's got tattoos all over his neck before tattoos on people's necks were popular. Went and talked to him and just followed his directions and went from there, and busted my ass for a couple of years. And he got to know me, that I really went there to work. And he didn't pay me because I was underage. Right. I wasn't supposed to be there, but he introduced me to everybody who came. So if Ronnie James Dio was playing that night, he would call me into the office and I would walk in and I wouldn't pay any attention to Ronnie James Dio. I'd walk straight up to Mr. Nix and he'd say, do you know this guy? And I'd look at him and say, yes, sir, I do. This big shit-eating grin on my face. And Ronnie James would stand up and I'd look down on him and, say hello and nice to meet you. And, a conversation for maybe a minute, 2 minutes. And then I would end the conversation and leave because that was part of the thing. I didn't want to overstay my welcome with Mr. Nix or the artists that came in. So I got to meet everybody that came into the concert area. Mr. Nix would rent me out to the other venues that were in Phoenix at the time. So if anybody had a show going on, wherever the other venues were, the larger venues, he would call them and say, hey, you need Ed there because he's a hard worker. And I would go visit them and work that night and work that show and stuff like that. One of the things, like I said, I wasn't allowed to tell my friends that I worked there. So all my friends were going to all these concerts, Scorpions and Ronnie James Dio and Aerosmith and, all these people. And they're like, are you going to the show? And I'm like, nope, not going to the show. I don't have money for the ticket. And I would sit there and I would do my thing during prep and stuff like that, during sound check and things like that. And during the concerts, I was usually standing on the side of the stage, just watching the show. And every once in a while, I'd poke my head, my eyes out towards the curtain and see my friends, down in the front row or something like that, all crowded with, everything. And I would kind of hide back and because I didn't want them to know that I worked there. But it was a lot of fun. People kept wondering why I never went to shows, but I was there,
So you just had the backstage deal there.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
How fucking cool must it have been to meet Steven Tyler and Aerosmith, man? Like if there was a band that you could tell me that I could just chill with for not fucking party hard, just chill, talk history, maybe do whatever, have a drink. Aerosmith would probably have to be it. I mean, what a cool group of fucking guys that, I know Steven's had his stints where he likes to go off and do a solo thing, but they never really had that falling out like that some of the groups have had. They always wind up getting back together and still awesome, Joe Perry and all those guys. Just awesome. How cool was that to hang out with Steven for a day?
It was awesome. When they finally showed up, they showed up probably about 10:30 in the morning. And Mr. Nix called me into the office and Steven was sitting there and he said, do you know this guy? And I said, yes. He said, your job is to make sure that he's not alone all day. So I was like, okay, so I spent all day with Steven Tyler taking stupid little pictures of him, hanging out. We rode ATVs. We taunted the concert goers that were lining up, because Compton Terrace had these big, huge vertical iron, kind of gate things.
Gate
yeah. So we would sit there and I would drive the ATV and he would sit behind me and he, you know, we're slapping hands with the crowd and he says, get closer, get further away, get further away, get closer, you know, and we had a great time. We had lunch in the cafeteria tent and I got a bowl of Frosted Flakes and put my milk in it, you know, with the little milk machine thing. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting cereal. He said, no, 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 that's not the way we do it. And he took my bowl and threw it across the tent and poured more cornflakes in it, and then cracked open a Budweiser beer, poured it in there. And I had to sit there and eat this disgusting combination of Frosted Flakes and Budweiser beer. And he's just laughing the whole time. He thought it was funny. And I thought, at the time, I thought that Mr. Nicks was doing me a big favor because he knew Steven Tyler was my hero, you know, and I thought that he was kind of repaying me for all my hard work and that he was letting me hang out with Steven Tyler all day. And the older I got, the more I realized that it wasn't a favor to me. I was babysitting Steven Tyler to make sure that he didn't get in trouble so he could still perform that night. And I think that's pretty much what my job was that day. But as a kid, I thought, you know, this is cool as hell. And I keep hearing bad stories about him, that he's, you know, not a nice person and really nasty and things like that. I got to tell you, and Steven, if you're watching this, you probably don't remember that day at all, but it's one of the hugest things in my memory. You made my day. You were just like an instant brother. You were so nice and caring, and I just had the best time ever. And I don't know if it was because maybe Mr. Nick said something, you know, like take care of Ed or whatever it was, but I had a great time. It was one of the best stories that I have about anything in my musical career, as far as what's going on with that.
That's awesome, man. I worked with a guy that was from Boston, and I think I told you this story on the phone, but I'll tell it to you on the show as well, so our listeners can hear it. He ran a paintball company, and I think he said they closed at like 6 o'clock or something like that. It's like 5:30. They got a phone call, and it was like, you know, hey, what time you close? At 6. He's like, hey, if we have a guy that's gonna guarantee drop like a couple grand in there,
Right.
you stay open to like 6:30. You know, 30 minutes past your closing time, but you know, still close your shop, but just
Right.
be there to let us in. So he was kind of like, this is kind of weird, but all right, I guess. And he said, so he gets a call. He's like, hey, we're about to pull up. And he said he goes and he opens the door. And he's like, one guy comes in, he looks back, waves a guy in, guy comes out. He's like, he's just starstruck because he's like a Steven Tyler. He said, I swear to God, I thought he was floating coming in there. He said, this big jacket on, like fucking fur coming out of the back, coming in. And he's like, dude, he's like, I don't want you to think I'm like, you know, all this and that. He's like, but I want to shop and look and talk about shit. And he's like, if I'm in here when people are in here, I can't concentrate. You're not going to be able to sell anything. They'll ransack your fucking store.
Right.
He's like, I'm doing you a favor, believe it or not. And he's like, but I'm going to spend some money. And he said, sure as shit. He bought it. I don't know if it was one of his kids or nephews or what it was, but he said they bought a lot of damn paintball stuff in there. I think he said he spent like almost $4,000 or $5,000 in there.
Wow.
Kind of paintball stuff. So the one person that I know that met Steven Tyler had good things to say about him. I've heard other people, you know, say those things too, but I think a lot of that just depends on, you know, when you meet him, man. I mean, you got to think these guys are on tour, they're in the street, they could be, you know, on E or whatever, you know, maybe didn't enjoy the last set they had or something like that. You know, you can't always expect people to be in the best moods. That's just like you and I. I'm sure, you know, sometimes you wake up not in the best mood. Same here. So, I mean, you can't
Never. That never happens with me.
you
Never.
can't expect these guys to always be nice 24/7. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Well, the one thing I think I told you on the phone is that, you know, a lot of musicians that I've run into, they're, you know, like basketball players, they get in the zone. And before a show, they're thinking about the show, they're thinking about the changes, they're thinking about the intros and stuff like that. And somebody comes up and says, oh my God, it's Steven Tyler. And they're all in their face. And it's like, get the fuck out of my face, man. You know, and I think that adds to the stories of him being not nice.
Yeah.
You know, because the guy just wants to do his thing, and you know, you're all in his face and stuff like that. And I think that's a lot of where the stories come from. But I had a great time with him. He'll always be one of the top echelon stories that I've got. So yeah. I thought he was great.
And so smooth, like on stage. He usually has the mic and like shit tied to the mic and just all the stuff. He's just one of them cool guys that just make it look effortlessly. Like everything he does is just so
Yep.
suave and cool. It's just
Yep.
I love watching them perform, man. The day that they no longer tour, that one of them passes away, will be a sad day in music history.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, when I worked for Mr. Nix, I ran around doing a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things during Aerosmith was I took the mic stand and put it on the stage. And for me, that was like, you know, it's like what's his name, you know, doing
We're
the
not
we're not
worthy.
worthy. Yeah,
We're not
exactly.
worthy.
That's the way I felt. I mean, you know, this huge big grin on my face, and you know, the you know, whatever. But I just thought that was the coolest thing ever for a 17-year-old kid to be doing. I just, yeah, that to me was, that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And I think we had this discussion also. I think people underestimate because the photographers aren't necessarily front and center and things you hear about. I often equate, I think I made this analogy on the phone. I put those in the same category as like offensive linemen in football. They do the dirty work, but it's really important to the team. Because if that offensive line ain't blocking, your running back can't run, he can't get yards, your quarterback can't throw downfield. If you don't have a good photographer, then you can't market your stuff the right way. You can't put out good album covers. I mean, album covers, like you said, I think on the phone, that can make or break a band. I mean,
yep.
that can change your CD sales. I mean, the one right now, I think that Nirvana album cover with the baby in the pool. I mean, that's just one of those like iconic ones. And I mean, there's a lot of others, but I mean, it's just that right album cover, that right picture, like you said, can make or break an album or a band in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely it can. I mean, you know, where would we be without pictures of Alice Cooper throwing a chicken out in the stage, or Ozzy Osbourne biting the head off a bat? I mean, where would those people be? Where would those stories be without that? You know, you got Sex Pistols doing whatever they were doing and carving themselves up, and Lou Reed, and, you know, all these people, these iconic pictures of these famous rock stars and musicians that would not have existed had the photographers not been there. So you would hear about stories. Okay, yeah, Gene Simmons, yeah, okay, he dresses up in, you know, costume and stuff like that, but I don't know what he looks like because I've never been to his concert. The only way that we know that, you know, what bands are like is because of the photographs. And a good photograph will capture a person in. Like if you've never listened to Kiss and you're looking at them like, what in the hell is that? I got to go see this show. This guy's wearing 9-inch platform shoes. I got to go see this for myself. And it adds to the concert goers. And then it ultimately adds to the people that listen to the music. So if you get a bad picture, like, you know, it's never happened to me. But if there's a band that are a bunch of assholes, you know, I will take their picture in completely shitty fucking ways, you know, just because there's like, you know, if the guitarist is a dick or whatever, you know, fuck him. I'm not going to take any pictures of him. You just don't take any pictures of that guy. You know, the singer comes up and says, "Hey man, how's it going? What's up? How's it going?" You know, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll take pictures of you all night long, but your guitarist can fuck off. I'm not taking any pictures of him." You know, or people, there are bands out there. Uh, I can't think of his name right now. The bass player for Judas Priest. I can't think of his name, but he was hiding back in the back of the stage pretty much the whole show. And I'm like, okay, dude, I can't take any pictures of you because you're hiding back there in the dark, you know? So, you know, I just focused on Rob and the guitarist and stuff like that. So, and drummers, unfortunately, you don't get too many pictures of drummers because they're either on a high rise and they're out of touch with the photographer's lens, or they're hiding behind this huge big drum kit, and all you see is the top of their head bobbing up and down, and it's like, okay, that's not going to be a good picture. So you don't get very many pictures of drummers either. So
probably Tommy Lee's like one of those ones that probably gets the most pictures out of anybody else.
yeah, because he's out in front. He thinks he's a singer. He lives his life as a singer behind a drum kit. So yeah, he's pretty crazy. I could tell you stories about them too. It would rack your brain.
Dude, I bet. I mean, we're talking about just hanging out with somebody, being cool, conversation, laid back. I bet Motley Crue. I mean, I've read The Dirt, so I've read that, and I've seen the movie, which was very scaled down from The Dirt. But I bet those guys done some fucking partying, son, in their day.
Yeah. They. I'm not. I don't know if I. There's a lot of stories about Motley Crue that I have. So I'm
sure I wasn't one that won't get anybody arrested.
I wasn't friends with them, but I was very close to where they lived, like downstairs from where Vince lived. And I was involved in a lot of stuff. So one of the stories, one of the stories is somebody passed out at the party, and across the street you had the Esplanade, and then you had the beach, and somebody passed out at the party. And do you remember what a water balloon launcher is?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like so a rubber band type thing?
Yeah, with the little pouch on the end. Yeah. It's like a big slingshot.
Yeah.
So we took the person's keys, put them in the slingshot, and bounced it right over into the sand. So yeah, and that was the tamest thing I think I can tell you about that particular party.
Oh, dude.
But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And like I said on the phone, there's a lot of stories that I have about a lot of people that I don't want to mention who they are or who I'm talking about, but I can certainly tell you the stories because I have a reputation with the bands and musicians that, you can call me at 3:00 in the morning from the tour bus and say, I'm having a shitty time, or we just did this, or I just did this, and I feel bad, or I feel good, and I feel really good, and and just sit there and talk, and it's a lot of fun, and I love the respect that they have for me because they know that once they tell me that story, that's as far as it goes. So it's just two people talking. So I don't know if I would consider any of them friends,
right?
But good acquaintances. So.
Without name dropping anybody, like what's one of the craziest stories like that somebody called you and got you involved in the middle of the
night? Somebody called me one night. It was probably maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. They called me and they said they weren't sure, but they think the tour bus just hit somebody.
Oh shit.
God damn. What are you doing? Why didn't you stop? And the bus just kept going. So they don't know if they hit somebody or not. But I was like, I don't know what the fuck that story was or whatever happened to it. But,
not.
And it was before the internet. So it's not like you can look up and say, oh, did somebody get hit on, I-5 last night?
Or bastard hit on I-45 or something.
Yeah. So it's really strange. I mean, some of the stories are, they were screwing around with one of the groupies, and, they're married, and their wife is right in the next room, and they're doing stuff with the groupies and stuff like that. So it's pretty crazy stories. There's a whole spectrum of stuff, whether they're doing drugs or they're drinking and they're not supposed to be drinking or doing drugs, whether they're doing stuff with people that they shouldn't be doing or with somebody else's wife that they shouldn't be with. All this stuff, and it's more like a confessional, where they know that because of my days with Compton Terrace, they know that that's as far as it goes. And I've never told anybody, any of the names.
You're like the local priest they can go and just give their confessionals to.
And all I do is just sit there and listen, and if they're feeling bad, a lot of times they get depressed because they're away from their family and, this and that and the other thing. And they get depressed and they call me up and they just want somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And, I make them laugh and tell them stupid shit and, stupid jokes and, kind of blowout stories and things like that. And just make them laugh and talk to them for as long. It's kind of like the same thing with the Disney character. So it's, the Disney characters will hug you as long as you hug them.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. You just talk to them on the phone for as long as they need to talk. And then, when they end the phone conversation, that's, they feel good enough to end the phone conversation.
I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I actually think I was a guest on the podcast. We talk about like doing drugs and stuff like that. Like, coming up when I was young, well, obviously this is before my time, but I mean, remember Elvis, got hooked on drugs and stuff like that, but there wasn't a ton of like overdose deaths, with
Right.
musicians. I mean, there was some. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't, but it seems like nowadays, and I don't know if it's this fentanyl shit or what it is, but it seems like nowadays there's more people dying, at an early age from this shit. And I'm looking at guys like Ozzy and Keith Richards. I mean, people have just been fucking partying for years, like partying hard and still going.
Yeah. I think a lot of it with that is that the older musicians, Ozzy and things like that, had to bust their ass to get where they were. Mm-hmm. And they worked their way up and they were born drinkers.
Yeah.
And you were used to doing drugs and hard drugs. And that's just the way your life performed. I mean, that's the way you moved on life. And the people nowadays don't have that hard life that they have to get through in order to get there, like Ozzy, living where he lived and then getting to where he got, that's just life. And nowadays you have, your mom and dad are still married and you've got brothers and sisters and you were raised in a nice little place in Utah and everything was peachy keen and you never did drugs. And then now you're going out on stage in Europe somewhere, on a tour that lasted 250 days and somebody's offering you drugs here and there and you just keep doing them and you're not used to them. Your body hasn't built up an intolerance to it, or a way to condition yourself to it.
Right.
And they just drop dead. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the record companies don't care. You put out 3 albums, they don't care if you're dead or not. They don't care. And and honestly, it's called the dead man's bounce. So if Prince dies of an OD, his sales go through the roof.
Oh yeah.
And the record companies make money off of it. And so they don't care. And they don't offer you the drugs, but they certainly don't say, don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't want you to do any drugs, and the first 3 albums, they're like, get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. Okay, now you've gotten it done. You've made enough money for us. Do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
And, they don't put any stops to it and they're not working you hard like a workhorse. You're out to pasture and you can do what they want. If you still continue to make them money, great. If you don't, that's fine. If you die, who cares? Because your sales are going to go through the roof. So
yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed here, especially lately, like when someone passes away, be it like or recently, the Judd lady, I don't know if it was,
yeah.
So like the Judds are like trending now on iTunes and everything else.
Oh yeah.
When somebody dies, it's like everybody goes back. It's almost like a way to remember them or something like that.
Right.
You go back and then you play all their old songs, and then, like you said, it's almost like a last extra hoorah to the record company, one last boost of money coming in for them.
Absolutely. One of my friends is God, I just completely freaking spaced on his name. Bon Scott. He's Bon Scott's son. And I talk to him on a regular basis. And he gets absolutely zero for what Bon Scott did with AC/DC. So he gets absolutely nothing because the record companies, I guess, the contract was per contract, not per album or something. I'm not sure how that worked out, but Benjamin gets absolutely nothing. from all of that. So he's like, you know, there's a, and it's just crazy. And bands will screw each other into the ground. Kiss, Gene Simmons, him and Peter Criss, they didn't get along. So they had the new drummer record all of the past drumming from all the other albums. So when they're reprinting the new albums, the new drummer is getting the money for Peter Criss's stuff because he's the one that's on the album, the newest album.
Wow.
So yeah, when I met Bill Ward, he was living in his car in San Pedro. Now, Bill Ward was the drummer for Black Sabbath, and Black Sabbath, Ozzy had left or got kicked out, whatever the story is. And Tony Iommi had frozen all the bank accounts for Black Sabbath. Well, Ozzy didn't care because Ozzy had a solo career that was making money, but Geezer Butler and Bill Ward were broke. So this guy's living out of his car. So when we met him, I said, how can you be Bill Ward? I mean, you're living in the street. You're living in your car. And he opened up the trunk and there's all these gold records in the trunk of his car. So, I mean, and then he's telling me the story about how that happened. And I'm like, it's unbelievable what these guys do to each other, when they break up. And I don't know if it's a vindictive thing where, hey, you screwed us, you left, or you're leaving and we're just going to screw you into the ground and, do our very best to make everybody's life as bad as possible just because our feelings are hurt. I don't know what that deal is. So, I mean, it's almost like a divorce. Most divorces end where you just hating each other and you just pounding heads up against each other. And I never thought that way. I was like, well, if you get divorced, you just, see ya, whatever, and you're fine with it. And I always thought that if I was in a band, that if things broke up, like Alice Cooper's first band that he had, when those guys left, there was no animosity towards those guys. It was just, it ran our course. We ran our course and we need to get some fresh faces in here and do some stuff. And whenever Alice Cooper talks about things like that with his first band, it's always very pleasant. And he talks always, very nicely about his original band members. So I think that's kind of cool. But I think that also goes with Alice Cooper's mentality and his personality. So
yeah. I interviewed Tom McLaughlin not too long ago, and he done Friday the 13th Part 6. And Alice Cooper had like a certain song in there that was kind of dedicated to that album. Alice Cooper's just one of those dudes, man. He always kind of inserted himself to whatever was kind of cool and hip at the time. Like I remember even in wrestling, he got in there with like Jake the Snake Roberts, in the snake pit and stuff like that. And then he done the Teenage Frankenstein, I think was the song.
Oh, yeah.
And the Friday the 13th. He's just one of those guys that always kind of knows how to play the game and insert himself into pop culture and what's cool and going on at the time to keep his name relevant. And look at, he's been doing it for years, so he knows a thing or two about a thing or two.
It's funny. There's a Dodge dealer in Scottsdale. I don't know if he still owns it, but at the time he owned it. And when you walk into the Dodge dealer, there's pictures of Alice Cooper everywhere. It's like, what is going on here? Alice Cooper owns the shop. So, okay. Wow. So some of those guys, put their fingers in all kinds of pies. The smart ones do. Make money, because, not everybody's an Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne, and their careers are going to last 3 or 4 years, and that'll be the end of that. I mean, you got to protect yourself.
Yeah, got to look long term. And going back to what you were talking about with the record deals, I mean, I hear all the time about how people, get screwed on the record deals. That's why a lot of people now, if they have the ability, are trying to do like independent and own their own. What's that? I think there's a term to own their own masters. That's like the key where a lot of people are trying to get to, especially these new up and comers. There's a guy, he was a rapper, Master P. But he done everything like solo. He owned all his own masters. He produced all of his own stuff, and he had a lot of rappers up under him. I think he called them No Limit Soldiers. And I remember when I was a kid, that was kind of like his peak. And it seemed like they were coming out with a damn CD like every week almost, like everybody
Oh
in
yeah.
his entourage. And I mean, he made a lot of money and he schooled a lot of those guys to
Oh yeah.
tell them how to do it. And when you can keep your own masters and control it, you're making a whole lot more money.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you have to be in control of the stuff. You have to have some kind of business sense to be able to do that, or have somebody that you trust. And that's a big word.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody that you can trust to handle all that and take care of you, you know. And I don't know who it was that I was talking to a couple weeks ago that said one of the managers of this musician took all the money from the musician at the beginning of his career and was buying land with it. And at the end of the guy's career, you know, he's like, well, what am I going to do? My career's over. I'm too old. And he's, well, you got all this land, you know? So it's like, what do you mean I have all this land? Said, yeah, all the money that you had given me to take care of for you, I purchased land with it. So the guy was filthy rich.
Yeah.
By the time it was all over with. And he's like, you know, oh my God, I don't know who it was. I want to say Buddy Guy, but I don't think it was Buddy Guy because I would have remembered the conversation a little better if it had come from him. So I don't remember who it was.
That's
So,
always the one of the things that they say, you know, buy land because God ain't making any more of it. What's left
right.
of it, what you got.
God ain't making any more of it, but the people in Dubai are. So,
Yeah.
you know, gotta figure out where you want to live.
Now, I got to think, like, when you're working, you're behind the scenes at these concerts and things like that. Did you have any pull as to who was able to get back there? Because, I mean, as a backstage hand, I got to think I might look for some favoritism by some of these people trying to get back there. You know, just
I I don't know. Was it you that I had this conversation with the other day?
Yeah.
So yeah, there were instances where people would show up, not people, women, girls would show up when I was younger, and they would see me with my backstage pass. I don't know where the backstage passes are, but they would see the backstage pass and say, "Hey, can we get backstage?" And I'm like, "No, you know, I stuff to do. We'll do this, you know, for a backstage pass." And you're like, "Really?" And you're checking them out. You're like, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind that." So you go ahead and, you know, have them pull around in the, you know, in between the trucks or whatever, give you a blowjob, and then you're like, "Okay, well, I'll be right back. I'll go get your pass." And then you take off and you're like, "Yeah, whatever, you know, I don't know who it was." And then you see them later on, they're like, "Fuck yeah, you know."
I was looking for you. I don't know where you went.
That's right. Did you stay near the truck? Because really, I went back and you weren't there.
I gave it to another blood. I'm sorry. Right. Get me tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. One of the things that's at Compton Terrace is that if the band members saw someone, they would kind of point to the security guards, you know, her right there.
Yeah.
You know, and then the security guards would get them backstage, and then they would do whatever they wanted to with backstage. And then, you know, you'd see those girls running around.
Yeah.
So every once in a blue moon, the same girl that they picked out is the same girl that did you a favor behind the bus. And she wouldn't even pay attention. You know, fuck off, and just walk by, you know.
I'm with the band now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're with the band now. You wait an hour till it's ready to get time to go on the bus. You know, you'll be escorted off the property. So yeah, so it's, you know, I don't really know if that happens much anymore. I know that it did back in when I first started.
Yeah, now I don't know if you even want to chance it right now with the way things are these days.
Exactly. So especially with COVID, I think all that stuff is closed down. Mm-hmm. I know that Slash's bodyguard was really tight about all the COVID restrictions and stuff like that the last time they were here. So I wouldn't imagine that happens very much in the last 2 or 3 years. Plus all the older guys that we're discussing all have families now, families and
Right.
kids and things like that. So
Yeah.
they don't do the drugs, they don't drink that much or at all, and they don't screw around because usually their wife is right with them.
Yeah.
You know,
They're back there, backstage, waiting on
yeah.
it to get
So
done.
if you ever see Slash in concert, his girlfriend is sitting right off stage every night. So
I
it's
had
like,
the pleasure of doing that.
yeah,
It was about 20, I'd say 2016. It was when they got together to do their reunion tour with Axl. Axl was back
yeah, yeah.
singing lead. Slash was guitarist, and I think Duff was even playing guitar with them. And they were at the Washington Redskins Stadium,
Nice.
and Alice in Chains opened up for them. And man, I tell you what, it was a hell of a show. It was probably
Yep.
one of the better concerts I'd ever been to, and it was funny because I mean, God, don't we all? That's why I only camera from the neck up. But Axel's put on a few pounds.
Oh
But
yeah.
I tell you, when he got in his songs where he was running from one end of the fucking platform to the other, he would go
Yep.
balls out, and then
Yep.
he would disappear, and then Slash would just play like a 10-minute guitar solo. Like he played the theme from The Godfather on his
Right.
guitar. It's one of the coolest fucking things I'd ever seen. And I
Right.
was like on the side. I was towards the front, about maybe 10 rows back, but I was like on the side where he was, and they had this huge screen up there, like a close up picture of him. I mean, it was just awesome to watch him do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it was like he would do that while I guess Axel went and got some oxygen and changed clothes.
That's what I was just gonna say. They're back there sucking oxygen. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
There
they rocked
there's
it, man.
a musician. One of my friends that lives near me is Roger Fisher. He's the guitarist for Heart, and I got the opportunity to go see Ann Wilson backstage, and I was taking photographs of the show and stuff like that. And I walked around the corner right before the show, and she's sitting on one of the steps and sucking oxygen and stuff like that. And I think I embarrassed her, but I just kind of acted like I didn't know who she was and turned around and walked away. But it's embarrassing for those guys because they think they're old if they have to suck oxygen, but
Yeah.
they've been doing that for a long time. I mean, Steven Tyler had his things in his mic stand and sewn into the fabric of the mic stand stuff. And, all those guys have been doing that kind of thing since, probably the dawn of rock and roll concerts.
Yeah.
So, it's nothing new. It's nothing that they should be ashamed of. I mean, it's just part of the thing, I mean, I couldn't get up there and cruise around for a half an hour running back and forth. I'd be dead.
Hell
I'd be
no.
on this. Oh yeah, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
People would be like,
I watched Garth Brooks came to a Coliseum here where I live at in Charleston, and he was in a fucking hoodie and pants and was running back and forth, sliding, and I was just like, I don't know how the hell he's in that hoodie. Like I was sweating just looking at him do that. I was like, I would have to be coming out of that thing. And he done it like when he first came, it was a big deal because it was like, first time he had done one in a while, the stadium tour. And so I bought the tickets. It was like the 7 o'clock show. Me and my wife went. Well, I think it sold out like in record time, at least for around here. So we added a second show at like 12. Then that was on Friday. Well, then he added another show on Saturday. That one sold out. Then he added a second show Saturday, and I think one on Sunday. So he had 5 shows in 2.5 days, really.
yeah,
Dude, we didn't even get done. I had the 7 o'clock. I think this concert was scheduled to start for the second one at like 11. We didn't even leave till like 11:30. So he's already 30 minutes behind. And I'm leaving, and I seen some people in line that were coming in for that one. And I was like, man, y'all going to be in here all night. And he said that they went on to like 1 in the morning. And I mean, that's Garth Brooks, that's why people love going to his concerts because they're going to get their money's worth.
Yeah. People like Bruce Springsteen and Paul McCartney put on these hour and a half, 2 hour, 3 hour shows. And it's like, how the hell is that guy doing that? Because I can't, I couldn't walk back and forth to my driveway 2 times without being out of breath.
Right.
So I don't know how they're doing that, but that's what they're used to doing. And who knows how they do it, but God bless them. You know,
Right.
they do it every night. So, you know.
To get back on the photography for a minute, I think it's ironic because, like I said, we've discussed the importance of photography for quite a while, especially
Right.
album covers, things like that. Well, here lately, there's this app that I'm sure everybody listens to or is on it, Instagram, and that's
Yep.
kind of made the world have maybe a little bit more appreciation for photography. It's opened up a lot of people to be more creative with their photos and things
Yep.
like that, which I think is a great thing. But before that, people didn't really have ways to showcase their photography. Maybe Facebook, maybe if you're going back before that, MySpace somewhat,
Right.
which I really liked, man. I actually hated Facebook when it first came
Yeah.
out. I was a MySpace fan because you had the ability to put music with it.
Right.
And that's why I liked it. But going back to like when you were doing this in the heyday, what was some of your favorite photos? Because I know you got to have some favorites.
Uh, that I took or
Yeah,
that
that
other
you
people
took.
took. Steven Tyler, was top of the line. Ronnie James Dio. There was a couple that I took from Grateful Dead, and I'm not a big Grateful Dead person, but the pictures were really good.
Right.
David Bowie, there was a few that I liked out of David Bowie. But again, when I started doing this, I worked for the venues and there wasn't too much time for me to do that kind of stuff. It was more like one song. And, nowadays it's 3 songs. You get to shoot 3 songs and then you got to leave. But back when I first started this, it was more like, do I have the opportunity to take that picture? And you just kind of take the picture that you can. And it was a 35 millimeter camera that had 36 exposures on it. So you could take, and you had to wind it between the shoot, and stuff like that. So out of the 36 pictures, you might get 1 picture or 2 pictures that were worth keeping because you couldn't change the IPO or the speed, and things like that, or the f-stop on these little cameras that I had, that I started with. And, is either too dark or too light or too blurry or, whatever. And you just by chance got this one good picture while somebody was on stage. And it wasn't until later on that I started getting Nikon equipment and, getting better at doing things and taking pictures of people. The one person that I really like taking pictures of because I enjoy the show is Buddy Guy. I don't know if you know who he is, but if you don't know who he is, you got to look him up. He's just an amazing guitarist. Really nice guy, really fun stories, great show, great concert. And he's really fun to take pictures with. The other person, I'm sorry,
Who does he play with?
it's just him, just Buddy Guy. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard of him.
Yeah, he did a lot. Every guitarist that's out right now for the past 40 years was influenced by Buddy Guy.
Wow.
So he's the guy. So yeah, give him a listen to. The other one that sticks out in my head is Elton John. Really enjoyed shooting him because we kind of played back and forth off of each other. So that was kind of fun. It's really cool when somebody that you look up to, and I'm not a huge big Elton John fan. I mean, I'm just like everybody else. You listen to 5-6 songs, but when he saw me there and, I was kind of playing with him and he was playing with me, it was great. It was great interaction between, and there were times during that show that honestly, I felt like that entire concert was for me only. And I forgot about the other 20,000 people that were standing behind me. But it was really cool. It was really, really cool. And there, like Alice Cooper, I loved shooting Alice Cooper. This picture right here of Alice Cooper, just unbelievable picture, Alice Cooper. The Who, you've got Pete Townsend over here, and you've got Roger up there. So you got those guys. Dweezil Zappa was kind of cool because I knew his dad, and before the show, I talked to Dweezil, and Dweezil doesn't like his pictures being taken but I talked to him before the show and said, hey, I was friends with your dad. He introduced me to Steve Vai and blah, 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 blah. And then during the show, I got to shoot the show, and that was kind of nice. Joe Satriani, Slash. The other guys that I've shot before, the guys from LA Guns.
Yeah.
And, Phil Lewis and I have become friends over the past however long. But I love Phil because him and I have a lot of things in common. It's kind of bizarre when we start talking about different things. It's like, you like that too? It's like, yeah, me too. It's like, how about this? Do you like that? Yeah, it's like, it's so strange that we're so connected and come from such diverse backgrounds. But that he's one of the guys that I really like too. They've got a new album out, by the way.
LA Guns?
LA Guns has a new album out, and I can't remember what the name of the album is. For some reason, I think it's Checkered Past, but I'm not positive on that. But they're coming up, getting ready to tour. And I got to tell you, him and Tracy, man, and the rest of the guys in the band kill it. They really, really do. It's like, I don't want to say stepping back in time because everybody has matured, but it's the same kind of energy that it was back in the 80s and early 90s. It's a fantastic show. And the cool thing about those guys is they don't do large shows. They like their pockets small, and they do it on purpose because it's a much better atmosphere to do that. And it's a great show. It's real personalized. It's more in your face, and there's a lot of energy. So if anybody has the chance to go see these guys, go see them because they really blow the doors off of everything.
Yeah, a lot of guys are starting to back tour finally. I think like Motley Crue is going on tour right now with Poison and Def Leppard. Joan Jett, I think, is even joining them on some venues. So I mean, just if you're a fan of rock and roll, man, catch these guys when you can, because like we mentioned earlier, you don't know when some of these greats are going to start passing away. And to me, like I said earlier, one of the greatest concerts I was ever been to was Guns N' Roses. And I mean, being able to see Slash play that guitar, in my opinion, one of the greatest guitarists ever. It was just awesome. And I had my daughter with me, and, I had to kind of explain to her who Guns N' Roses was. And I was just like, you've heard their shit. You might not know it was their name, but like, you've had to heard it in movies and stuff like that. And then once she started, oh, I know that song. Oh, I know that song. And I'm like, look, these guys were fucking awesome. It's like, you're going to like this concert. And she loved it. And so I got to school all my kids on that, man, because I spent a little time in radio. And so we had this station up there to where it was like hits from yesterday and today. So it would play a lot of oldie stuff. And like 80s music is like my favorite genre of music too, even still today. It's just, that's when music, I don't know, it just felt different, man. I mean, there's some good shit out there today, but it's few and far between. Most of it's just fucking hot garbage, to be quite honest. Back then you felt it. There was even though I wasn't, old enough to appreciate it then, I still feel it now. And that when a music stands the test of time, that's when you know that it was written, from the heart. A lot of those guys were writing those songs from the heart, and stuff they were living and stuff like that. It was, really good shit.
Yeah. Now the guys from Guns N' Roses and I, we had some history together. And at one point, Duff McKagan and I had a falling out a couple of years ago. And it's not that we were friends. We weren't friends, but we're acquaintances. And I thought I was doing something nice for him and his wife. And for some reason, everything just blew up and got completely whacked out on proportion. And I was like, what? I was just dropping books off. So it's like, I don't know how this whole thing blew out of proportion, but, whatever. And I haven't talked to him since, but, whatever, stuff happens. So, misunderstandings and miscommunications and things like that. And I probably overstepped my comfort level, and he didn't understand that it wasn't a malicious thing. It was just, here's a book. I thought you'd like to read it.
Yeah.
and so who knows what the hell happened, but everybody is always after these guys for doing something. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you sign this? Can I take your picture? Can I interrupt you while you're eating dinner or walking down the street with your kid? And, it's no wonder these guys are very guarded individuals, because they don't know. They're not going to give you the opportunity to explain yourself. But, it's like, okay, I'm pissed off at you because you did this. And it's like, I didn't do that. It was just, kind of thrown out of whack. So, but you can't blame these guys because can you picture Axl Rose going to Denny's, having lunch during, dinner time? I mean, it'd be pandemonium. Yeah. Or, going to Good Stuff down in Redondo Beach, Vince Neil and Tommy and these guys hanging out at Good Stuff on the beach. It would be pandemonium.
Yeah.
So
I mean, people, I think, a lot of times say they want to be that famous guy, that rock star or whatever, but you have to live a different type of lifestyle. Like you said, there's just no getting in the car and going to a restaurant to eat. You can't. I mean, you'd be swamped. I mean, it would just, it's a different lifestyle altogether. Now,
can you imagine Elton John bringing his kids to Chuck E. Cheese?
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen. I don't, it's not something that's going to happen very easily.
Now that's when he just rents out the whole damn Chuck E. Cheese.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or just builds one in his backyard or something.
Right.
You got a full-time mouse back there.
Right.
You mentioned books earlier. We'll use that to kind of segue into it. You're actually putting together a book from your, as it kind of got pictures of your photography in it. Tell us a little bit about that.
The book has mainly portraits in it. It does have some concert stuff in there. Elton John, I think Buddy Guy, Rob Halford. There's a few other ones that I think are in there, but mainly it's just portraits that I've done of not famous yet.
Right.
Actors and actresses and movie directors and fashion designers, things like that. But it's some of my best work. It's 300 pages long.
Wow.
And it's a hardcover and it's glossy pages and it's quite pricey. It's $250. But last year I ordered the book in bulk and everybody paid I think it was $60 for the books. But this time I didn't do that. I didn't buy it in bulk. So I'm just ordering it as people order it from me. So if anybody's interested, and again, I like my photography. Everybody likes my photography work, but in my head, I'm like, why in the hell would people, want to see a picture that I took of whoever, it's my picture. I'm not understanding why that happens. And, some of the people, I can see, they want to see Elton John and stuff like that. But some of these people are buying the book and they're like, yeah, I really want that book. Can you order it for me? He's like, yeah, and I say, you're not in the book, are you? And they're like, no, we're not in the book. We just want the book. I'm like, why? They're like, it could be worth some money someday. I'm like, yeah, recycling, I think, is going to be hitting the roof here in about 10 years. And you could probably get another extra $10 out of it. So I appreciate that people want the book, but I can't understand why anybody who's not in the book or associated with somebody that's in the book would want the book. But if you'd like the book, you can do it. So
now, where would they get
some of my best work, though? So I'm really pleased with it.
If they do like that book, or there might be somebody listening to this that you got pictures of in there and they recognize you. If they do like it, where would they go about finding it?
You would contact me through Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is dose.photo, DOSE.photo. And then on Facebook, it's Edward Dose on Facebook. So it's Edward Dose, DOSE on Facebook. So, or you can go to the webpage and contact me through the webpage. The webpage, I'm sure, is going to be listed down below, but that's edwarddosphotography.com. So you can look on there in my portfolio and all the pictures are on there. And
I looked on there when you sent it to me in Messenger. You got some great stuff on there, man, for sure.
Nice. Thank you.
Really good shots. Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, man. We got to shoot the shit a little bit, talk good
Oh, yeah.
pictures, rock and roll stories, favoritisms that was played by backstage passes. I mean, all good conversation, man. I enjoyed it.
I like the favoritism. So if there's anybody out there that did me a favor, and I don't know who you are. So it's, you're going to have to remind me in detail of who you are and
what did you do again.
Send pictures. That's the best way to do these things.
Yeah.
I'll remember it quite clearly if you send pictures.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show, man. I've had a blast. I really have.
You're welcome anytime.
For sure. We'll definitely have you back, man. Shoot the breeze a little bit again.
Nice.
Later on. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Hollywood Wade. That was Edward Dose, and unfortunately, we are out of time. Tune in next week for a new episode of Crime and Entertainment. We appreciate it, my friend.